My wife went to meet her boss at his house, against my wishes, saying there were no power in their office and the whole team would be at his home. My name is Eric. I'm 34, a software engineer in a mid-sized tech company. My wife, Jenna, is 31 and works as a marketing manager for a local chain of gyms. We've been married for 7 years. From the outside, we had what people would call a picture-perfect marriage. A small but comfortable home in the suburbs, shared interests in traveling and fitness, and no major disagreements, at least none that I thought were serious. That illusion shattered on a Friday night in September. Jenna had mentioned earlier that week about a critical meeting her boss, Ryan, wanted to host. She explained it away as a group strategy session to discuss the company's poor quarterly performance. The power's out in the office, she said casually, so he's hosting at his place. The team will be there. Her words didn't sit right with me. Maybe it was the way she avoided eye contact when she brought it up, or perhaps how she fussed over her outfit, a blouse and pencil skirt combo she hadn't worn in months. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling, but I kept my concerns to myself. In hindsight, that was my first mistake. Jenna left around 7 p.m., reassuring me she'd be back before midnight. I spent the evening trying to distract myself, but every time I looked at the clock, a nagging voice in my head grew louder. Midnight came and went. By 1 a.m. I called her. She didn't pick up. At 2 a.m., she finally texted, just wrapping up, heading home soon. She got home at 2:45 a.m. She looked flushed, almost euphoric. I asked her how the meeting went, and her response was vague, productive. That night, she climbed into bed without showering, which wasn't like her at all. The next few days were a blur of suspicion and self-doubt. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had happened that night, something Jenna wasn't telling me, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking things, that I was being paranoid. 3 days later, the truth came out, not because I discovered it, but because Jenna confessed. We were having dinner when she dropped the bombshell. I need to tell you something, she began, her voice trembling. That night at Ryan's, something happened. Her words hit me like a freight train. She admitted she'd slept with him. She swore it was a one-time thing, a mistake. She deeply regretted her reasoning. I don't know what came over me. We'd both been drinking, and it just happened. I didn't say a word. I just stared at her, my mind racing. The woman I'd trusted with my life, my future, had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. When I finally spoke, my voice was ice cold. We're done. Jenna begged me to reconsider and swore she'd do anything to make it right. But I wasn't interested in her tears or her apologies. She had made her choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. The next morning, I contacted a divorce lawyer. By the end of the week, I had the papers drawn up. Jenna was devastated, but I didn't care. She had destroyed our marriage, and there was no salvaging it. What Jenna didn't know was that I wasn't just planning to divorce her. I was planning to make her and Ryan pay. Cheating wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice, a deliberate betrayal, and they were about to learn the consequences of that choice. The divorce papers were only the beginning of my plan. As I handed them to Jenna, her face crumpled with disbelief. She begged me to reconsider, saying things like, "We can go to counseling and I could fix this." But I didn't flinch. There was no fixing what she had done. And honestly, I didn't want her to. What Jenna didn't understand was that I wasn't just walking away. I was preparing to take control of the narrative, to expose her betrayal and Ryan's lack of professionalism for what they were. I wasn't going to be another silent casualty of infidelity. If they wanted to act without consequences, they were about to get a rude awakening. To start, I needed information. Jenna had underestimated me in more ways than one. While she believed I was too hurt or too passive to dig deeper, I was already 10 steps ahead. Thanks to my job in tech, I had access to tools most people didn't. That gave me an edge when it came to gathering evidence. I began with Jenna's phone. It wasn't hard to access. I knew her passcode. She had deleted most of her texts with Ryan, but she wasn't thorough enough. A recovery app quickly unearthed weeks of messages, including those leading up to that fateful night. The text confirmed what their affair hadn't started that night. It had been going on for months. Flirty banter turned into explicit exchanges, plans for meetups, and even photos. Reading through them was like pouring salt on an open wound, but fueled my resolve. Ryan, as it turned out, was no saint either. Married with 2 kids, he presented himself as a family man to the world. But his messages to Jenna painted a very different. He was predatory, manipulative, and downright smug. He even joked about how easy it was to fool his wife. That's when I decided Ryan wasn't just going to face personal consequences. he was going to face professional ones too. If he thought he could use his position of power to exploit my wife and potentially others, he was about to learn otherwise. The next piece of the puzzle came in the form of an unexpected ally. Michelle, a former colleague of Jenna's who had left the company a year earlier but still kept in touch. When I mentioned my suspicions about Ryan, she wasn't surper. He's been creeping on women at work for years, she told me, but no one's had the guts to report him. Michelle's words solidified my decision to expose Ryan not just as an adulterer, but as a workplace predator. I started compiling Jenna's messages, photos, and Michelle's account. I even set up a meeting with a lawyer to ensure that what I was doing was legal. I wanted no loose ends. Then came the hardest part, playing the waiting game. Revenge, I realized, was like chess. Every move had to be deliberate and every piece carefully positioned. One wrong step and the whole plan could backfire. Jenna, oblivious to my scheming, continued to plead for reconciliation. She cried, left me notes, and even enlisted her sister Lauren to talk me out of the divorce. Lauren told me Jenna was truly sorry and that I should give her another chance. I didn't bite. I wasn't interested in their apologies or their guilt trips. In the meantime, I began working on the next phase. Public exposure. Destroying Jenna's life wasn't my primary target, but Ryan's reputation was fair game. His family deserved to know what kind of man he truly was, and so did his employer. To achieve that, I anonymously contacted Ryan's wife, Sarah. I knew from social media that she was active in local charity work and often attended events in town. I reached out to her through a private email account, attaching select screenshots of Ryan's texts with Jenna. Nothing too explicit, but enough to paint a clear picture of his betrayal. It didn't take long for Sarah to respond. Her initial email was cautious, almost skeptical, but once I provided more proof, including timestamps and photos, her tone shifted. She thanked me for letting her know and assured me she would handle it. I had no idea what handling it would look like, but I trusted her to take it from there. While Sarah worked on dismantling Ryan's personal life, I turned my attention to his professional one. Using the evidence I had gathered, I drafted an anonymous complaint to Ryan's HR department detailing his inappropriate behavior with Jenna and other female employees. I included Michelle's account as a witness and attached screenshots of the texts as proof. I sent the complaint on a Monday morning, timing it perfectly to coincide with the staff meeting Ryan was scheduled to lead. By noon, my phone buzzed with a message from Holy SH. HR just pulled Ryan out of the meeting. Everyone's talking about it. That was the moment I knew the dominoes were starting to fall. By midweek, the fallout from my anonymous complaint was in full swing. Michelle kept me updated through texts, each one more satisfying than the last. HR had conducted an impromptu investigation, interviewing female employees and reviewing the evidence I provided. Ryan, of course, denied everything at first, but as more women came forward, some inspired by my initial report, his facade began to crack. By Friday, Ryan was placed on administrative leave, pending a full investigation. That same day, Sarah served him with divorce papers. She wasn't quiet about it either. Through mutual friends, I learned that she had kicked him out of their house and sent a scathing email to his entire family detailing his affair with Jenna and other inappropriate behavior. The town wasn't big, and word spread quickly. Ryan's reputation as a family man was in shambles. Parents at his kids' school whispered in hushed tones. Charity groups distanced themselves from Sarah, though she seemed to be handling the situation with remarkable strength. I couldn't help but admire her resolve. She didn't just burn the bridge. She torched the entire shoreline. While Ryan's life crumbled, I turned my attention back to Jenna. Our divorce proceedings were moving forward, but I wanted to ensure she felt the full weight of her choices. I wasn't going to drag her through the mud publicly. That wasn't my style, but I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed either. I started by re-evaluating our shared assets. Jenna had assumed we'd split everything 50-50, but I wasn't feeling so generous. My lawyer, a sharp-witted woman named Claire, combed through every detail of our finances. With her help, we discovered that most of the money in our joint accounts came from my income, not Jenna's. It gave me leverage. When the time came to negotiate, I made my stance. I wanted the house, the car, and the majority of our savings. Jenna fought back, initially claiming she had a right to half. But Claire was relentless. Adultery might not affect the division of assets directly, she told Jenna's lawyer. But if you'd like to involve a judge, we can discuss how her actions contributed to the breakdown of the marriage. Jenna caved. By the end of the settlement, She was left with a small savings account, her personal belongings, and little else. It wasn't about the money for me. It was about sending a message. Choices have consequences, but I wasn't done. The final phase of my plan involved a touch of poetic justice. Jenna's affair with Ryan had been a secret only as long as I allowed it to be. Now I was ready to let the truth come to light. I reached out to a few of her colleagues, people I'd met at office parties and gatherings, and casually mentioned our divorce while hinting at the reason. It's tough, I said, feigning sadness. She got involved with her boss, Ryan. You know how these things go. It didn't take long for the gossip to spread. By the end of the month, Jenna's name was on everyone's lips at her company. While HR couldn't penalize her for the affair, she wasn't in a position of power like Ryan. Her reputation took a hit. The whispers and sideways glances from coworkers became unbearable. Jenna resigned 2 weeks later, claiming she needed a fresh start. With both Jenna and Ryan out of the picture, I felt an unexpected sense of closure. It wasn't joy exactly, but a deep, satisfying calm. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe again. But life wasn't done. Surprising me, 2 weeks after Jenna resigned, I ran into Sarah, Ryan's now estranged wife, a local coffee shop. It wasn't entirely by chance. Sarah had emailed me after serving Ryan with divorce papers, thanking me for bringing the affair to her attention. We'd exchanged messages, mostly about updates on how things were unfolding on her end. She wanted to meet in person to close the loop, as she put it. Sitting across from her, I realized how much weight she'd been carrying. Despite her composed demeanor, the strain was evident in her eyes. Ryan didn't just cheat on me, she said, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. He lied to our kids, made me feel like I was crazy for doubting him, and destroyed everything I thought we had. I nodded, understanding her pain in a way I never wished to. I get it, I said simply. They don't just betray us. They make us question our judgment, our instincts. Sarah smiled faintly. Exactly. Our conversation lasted longer than I expected. She told me how Ryan had been couch surfing at a mutual friend's house, and how she was pushing for full custody of their children. I shared how I'd finally gotten Jenna to sign the divorce settlement. By the time we parted ways, it felt less like a meeting of two scorned individuals and more like the beginning of an alliance, a connection forged through betrayal and resilience that neither of us anticipated. It was how much Sarah and I would continue to stay in touch. Over the weeks that followed, we exchanged messages and phone calls. Not about Ryan or Jenna, but about life. She asked about my work. I asked about her charity projects. It was refreshing to have someone who understood the devastation of betrayal without needing constant explanations. In the background, Ryan's professional life continued to implode. The HR investigation concluded with his termination effective immediately. Michelle texted me the day it happened, ecstatic. He's officially gone. Everyone's celebrating like it's a holiday. I couldn't help but laugh at the thought of Ryan walking out of that office, his carefully crafted image in tatters. As for Jenna, she reached out one last time, asking if we could meet. I agreed, not out of curiosity, but because I wanted to see if she'd learned anything from the wreckage she'd caused. We met at a small diner on the edge of town. Jenna looked exhausted, a shadow of the woman I'd once loved. "I'm sorry," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "For everything." I didn't interrupt. I let her talk, let her apologize, let her cry. But when she finally looked at me, waiting for some acknowledgement or forgiveness, I gave her none. "I accept your apology," I said evenly, "but it doesn't change what happened. You made your choices, Jenna. Now you live with them." That was the last time I saw her. Meanwhile, Sarah and I's friendship continued to deepen. We found solace in each other's company, and before long, that connection evolved into something more. It wasn't planned, but it felt natural. Healing together became a way of moving forward. She introduced me to her kids, who were wary at first, but warmed up to me over time. I, in turn, found myself smiling more than I had in years. One evening, months after everything had unfolded, Sarah and I sat on her back porch, watching her kids play in the yard. "You think it's over?" she asked quietly, sipping her wine. I thought about her question for a moment. I don't know if things like this ever feel over, I admitted, but I do know that we're not defined by what they did to us. We get to decide where we go from here. Sarah nodded, a small smile curving her lips. I like where we're going. So did I. As life began to stabilize, I thought. The chapter with Jenna and Ryan was closed. Sarah and I were building something genuine, and I was finally at peace with how things had unfolded. But peace is a fragile thing, and the past has a way of clawing back when you least expect it. One day, Michelle called me unexpectedly. "Eric," she said, her voice tense. "I thought you want to know. Jenna's been talking to people, trying to spin the story. Apparently, Jenna had been telling mutual acquaintances that I'd overreacted to her mistake, and that our divorce was driven by my coldness and inability to forgive. She painted herself as the victim, conveniently omitting the months-long affair and the lies that had come to light. It wasn't just infuriating, it was dangerous. In the wrong hands, her version of events could tarnish my reputation. I decided to handle it quickly and quietly. While I didn't want to stoop to Jenna's level, I also wasn't about to let her rewrite the truth. Over the next week, I reached out to the people she'd been talking, friends, colleagues, and even some of her family. I didn't rant or accuse. I simply presented the facts. A few select screenshots of her messages with Ryan were enough to set the record straight. It didn't take long for her false narrative to crumble. Jenna realized she was cornered and stopped spreading her version of events. The people she had lied to stopped defending her, and she was left in a self-made exile. Meanwhile, Ryan's situation went from bad to worse. Sarah's divorce proceedings were moving quickly, and her lawyer, an absolute shark, uncovered financial discrepancies in Ryan's personal accounts. He had been siphoning money from their joint savings to fund lavish gifts for Jenna and seemed other women he had been seeing. Sarah took him to court for marital fraud, and the judge ruled in her favor. She was awarded a significant portion of their shared assets, leaving Ryan financially crippled. Adding to his woes, word of his termination and the reasons behind it had spread within their industry. He became untouchable. No one wanted to hire a disgraced manager with a reputation for harassment and impropriety. Last I heard, he was working a low-level job far beneath his qualifications, struggling to pay child support and alimony. But the final piece of my revenge came almost by accident. One evening, I was scrolling through LinkedIn when I saw a job posting at a major company in my field. The position was high level, well-paying, and perfect for someone with my skill set. On a whim, I applied. To my surprise, I got the job. The catch? The office was located in the same building where Jenna had recently started working. I considered declining the offer. After all, running into her regularly wasn't something I looked forward to. But then I realized this wasn't just about a job. It was a statement. I wasn't running from the past. I was moving forward, stronger than ever. On my first day, I saw Jenna in the hallway. Her face turned ghostly white as she quickly ducked into a side room. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. My presence alone was enough to remind her of everything she'd lost. Months later, Sarah and I took her kids on a weekend trip to the coast. As we sat on the beach watching the waves crash against the shore, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the fragile kind, but the deep, unshakable kind that comes from knowing you've survived the worst and come out stronger. Jenna and Ryan had tried to take something from me. My trust, my dignity, my future. But in the end, they only destroyed themselves while I'd rebuilt my life, brick by brick, stronger than before. It was over now, truly over. And this time, I wasn't just moving on. I was thriving. Thank you, friends.